Hey, Daddy, this is the man of the champions, Bill Fonzie Alfonso, giving a shout out to
Something else.
something else, Daddy.
This is Nickel Matano, Great Warrior Wolf, and you are listening to Something Else.
I'm Tony Cini, and you're listening to Something Else.
Hey everybody, it's Rich Palladino, the voice of New England, and you are listening to Something Else with Arya.
Welcome to episode number 134 of Something Else. Feast your ear holes on this week's episode as we take a look at Mid-South Wrestling and World Class Championship Wrestling from October 22nd, 1983. Joining me, as always, is the Chris Bay to my Ace Austin. It's Trae. Trae, how you feeling today?
Are we still in Bullet Club, or is that not a thing anymore?
I don't think we are. I believe even in the world of TNA, they don't even acknowledge Bullet Club anymore.
Well, their bread is buttered on the other side now.
Yes, yes, it is. They're getting that WWE exposure.
Yeah, they're gonna get their top stars signed away and then be standing there with their dicks in their hands.
I mean, hey, I know where they could find some pretty big dicks.
Yeah.
The
At least one. I don't
opener,
know.
the opener of Mid-South, that's
I bet there was 6 foot of dick in this match altogether.
and that's just on the babyface team.
I'm ready. I got my dick jokes ready.
Oh, I think between the two of us, we'll be all set here. Especially since I kept writing that his partner was Long Eagle instead of Lone Eagle.
Long Eagle and Cowboy Long.
Yes. Oh Lord!
Just realized I accidentally wrote Cowboy Kang, which would be an entirely different character.
Would that have made the match more interesting or less, you think?
Well, depending on how much conquering Cowboy Kang can do.
Well, it's 1983, so they may have let him conquer it all. And actually, later on in the show, too, I'm going to have a bonus promo of the week for you. And
All right.
This is one of the great babyface promos of all time. And I want you to think about, oh no, it's better than Jumpin' Jeff Farmer. Think about Dusty Rhodes' Hard Time, Jake Roberts, the Muck of Avarice, like all these all-time great babyface promos. This is up there with them. Easily.
So, just because you brought up Dusty Rhodes, have you ever seen Dusty's original babyface turn from Florida from like 74, whatever year it was?
I may have, but I don't remember it.
So I was fucking about on the YouTubes today, killing some time, and I found that clip. And so it's from the Florida TV. I think like Dusty and Gordon Soley are voicing over this clip, and it's Dusty Rhodes and Pac Song with their manager Gary Hart against Eddie and Mike Graham. And just like, so I'm wondering what great terrible act are they going to do to Dusty that's gonna invoke his wrath and cause him to completely change his allegiance. And it was just like, it was like one friendly fire thing that Pac Song went to, like, Dusty was holding Mike Graham and Pac Song went to chop him and he ducked and he hit Dusty and knocked him out of the ring, and just that was enough. And not only was that enough for Dusty, that was enough for the crowd. So I don't know. I
Wrestling
don't
was so much
know if that's like,
simpler.
yeah, it was. And then I don't know. I feel like if something like that happened today, I would be irritated about it because I routinely get irritated where like uh baby face turns aren't earned. Does that make sense?
Hmm. Yep.
And it's like one of my biggest pet peeves is you're a baby face now because a heel turned on you. Which
That.
I guess Dusty's was a little better in that he turned on the heels, but it was for so little.
Hmm. Well, like we talked about this a few weeks ago, I believe. Like Randy Orton's original babyface turn from Evolution, he did not turn because he's fully embracing the fans now. He turned because his friends beat him up, and thus he had no more friends. And
Exactly.
it's like, earlier on the same exact show where Evolution turned on him, he talked all this shit about the fans. So it's like, did they rebook the fucking show in the middle of the goddamn show? You know, probably not. This is before Vince went that crazy.
Yeah, it's my least favorite type of turn. Just you're a
Yeah.
babyface now because heels turned on you. No, you're such an asshole that even the other assholes don't want anything to do with you.
Yeah. I mean, it would make sense I mean, it could make sense. Like, if like it's a babyface turn that is coming because the fans are getting behind this heel and they're planting the seed, and then the heel turns on his friend, and now he comes out the next week as a babyface and beats the shit out of his former friend and partner in crime. It can work, but yeah, it's like him just you know no real turn. He's a babyface now because he's a babyface. It's just lazy booking.
It's like we can
Although
even
it,
bring up I'm
Mhm.
sorry, we can even bring up a current example. Why the fuck is Kris Statlander a babyface again?
I honestly like, because I don't watch Rampage. I think you're the only person who does. It's like when she came out on the show a few weeks ago as a babyface, I was like, what the fuck? When the fuck was did she turn babyface again? Is she also an alien? Is
I
Stokely
wish.
not and is Stokely not in love with her anymore?
Stokely is not involved with her anymore. It looks like he's trying to get involved with Private Party.
Who, as an update to last week's program, is not in Junior Tag League.
No, but who the fuck are those Australian guys? The
But
Velocities? And
London and
it's
Paris are in it.
yeah, yeah, Jude London and Paris De Silva. I think they're from Tamashi, which is like New Japan satellite in Australia, run by mostly by Bad Luck Fale, I think.
And if you can't trust
Hey,
Bad Luck Fale to train your stars of the future, who can you trust?
hey, you know what? They gave us Caveman Ugg, and so like I'm all in on the Tamashi guys. Let's see what they can do because Caveman Ugg was awesome.
I was always a fan of Bad Luck Fale because, like, I've said this before, I like when things are different. And like that's why it's like I liked the Great Khali in 2006, because in a world where everyone's gimmick is professional wrestler, he was big, giant, scary motherfucker, and he stood out. So Bad Luck Fale, and Toru Yano in a New Japan resurgence with all the great workers they had over the last 10 years, Fale and Yano stood out in my opinion, a good way. You
See,
know,
I get very frustrated with people who are like they're just automatically down on anyone who isn't like a classical like great or I hate this term, but a work rate guy. Like
Mhm.
talking about New Japan, so what I don't at some dumbass on Twitter was saying like, "Oh, New Japan is good for so and so because it's just people who can wrestle good," and I'm like, Motherfucker, there is a whole faction in New Japan that exists solely to have bad matches and ruin my day. And then somebody was saying, well, Yujiro's the only one who sucks. The other ones are actually good. Number one, I did not say that Evil and Ren Narita and Yoshinobu Kanemaru sucked. I said they are there to have bad matches. And number three, like, Yujiro's perfectly
doesn't
competent.
Suck. Yeah.
Like, dude, not everybody on your roster needs to be fucking Will Ospreay or Ricochet or, you know, Kevin Knight or fucking like amazing high flyer or amazing like work rate guy. Somebody needs to be a utility player. You can't have a roster of all leading men and women. You need character actors. You need day players. You need all types to build a roster.
So next Thursday is Halloween. And you know what we need to watch for the Smoky Mountain show, in addition to that week's Smoky Mountain show?
What's that?
The ECW Monster Mash Battle Royal.
Oh, yes.
I think that should become a Halloween tradition on this show.
That we just review the same battle royal every year.
Yes. And talk about how great it would be if it happened again. Yeah. Yeah. Oh,
Man.
Lord. So, Mid-South Wrestling, October 22nd, 1983, from the Irish McNeil Boys Club in Shreveport, Louisiana. The last Mid-South and World Class I'm going to watch as 39 years old. Because by this time next Tuesday, I'm going to be 40.
Oh. Happy almost birthday.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Hey, you accomplished your goal, though. You finished the first draft of your book before you were 40.
Now, my goal is to release the book by the time I'm 40.
Oh, well,
so,
how you come on with that?
Proofreading right now.
All right.
You know, and yeah, we're fingers crossed we're gonna get that thing out. But let's get this one out here. Let's go to this week's intro with Boyd Pierce and this week's guest host, Bill Watts.
Welcome to Mid-South Wrestling Television Network. I'm Boyd Pierce, and listen to the excitement you'll be seeing this week. The popular little midget stars are here. They'll be in a big man and little man on each team. Leaping Lenny Poffo is back. Nikolai Volkov, the big rugged Russian, will be on the card. The Mid-South Tag Team title holders, the new ones, Hacksaw Butch Reed and Jim the Anvil Neidhart. Also, the North American Heavyweight title will be on the line. Magnum TA defending against 420 pounds King Kong Bundy. The Junkyard Dog against Max the Missing Link. It's a tremendous card. It'll take a lot of tremendous explaining, and a man no better than our guest commentator, Cowboy Bill Watts.
Well, I don't know, Boyd Pierce. I think I'm pretty confused. You know, last week, I guess the whole wrestling world is still in shock. I know Hacksaw Butch Reed is. There was the most unusual situation ever. There was a tag title match signed, and Butch Reed tried to manipulate Grizzly Smith into a situation to make him look a fool, and I was a part of it, and you were. We were all out there. The crowd, he tried to insult everybody. And it backfired because Grizzly got one up on him and got the Junkyard Dog made a troubleshooting referee for that evening, and we have a new North American champion, and that stands. It's Magnum TA. But also on that very same show, the tag titles were lost. So I've never seen a television show with two championship matches and two different titles being lost. But let's join the closing moments as the Junkyard Dog proves what a tremendous amount of heart he does, and he was out there for the pride of himself and Mid-South and all these fans, sacrificed a lot of pain and did what he thought was right. The Junkyard Dog referee and Magnum TA winning the title from Hacksaw Butch Reed. Let's join those closing moments.
It's not for now anyway. But hey, listen to the excitement of this week. You know, midgets are wrestling, regular sized wrestlers are wrestling. Magnum TA is defending the North American title against King Kong Bundy, and Junkyard Dog is going to wrestle Max. And Watts and Boyd say tremendous so many times, you would have thought that Don Callis was here, you know, cutting promos.
I was hoping that Dan Carr and Pat Barry were going to be on the show. That would have been cool. Or is it Pat? Is it the other way around? Remember Team Tremendous from like the Indies in like the mid 2010s?
I do not.
They're a pretty cool team. It was like a big guy and a smaller guy. It was
So
either
was
Dan
Tom
Perry and
Stanton
Bill
and Cowboy
Carr.
Lang?
It was well, no, it was the way cooler team, George Weingroff and Lone Eagle.
Are we sure George Weingroff and Lone Eagle were a much cooler team?
I mean, yeah, it's got George Weingroff on it.
Well, true, but I mean, even with George Weingroff, is Lone Eagle cool enough to not bring down the cool factor of the team?
He's just cool by association.
Hmm. I, I mean, even so, like, you still have to be cool enough on your own to hold up your end of the bargain. But in
Yeah,
case you know, in case you can't figure out what the hell we're talking about, fans, in an unusual and exciting tag team match, or so says Reeser Bowden, Tom Stanton and Cowboy Lang took on George Weingroff's penis and Lone Eagle. Now, before we get into the discussion about penises, I'd like to say that Reeser calls Cowboy Lang uh, a great big partner of Tom Stanton, and then didn't say the same about Lone Eagle. And who do you think should be more offended by that?
um, I don't pay that much attention to what Boyd says.
Well, it's great, but Reeser said it.
I really don't pay attention to what Reeser says.
I bet if he was drunk Mark Lawrence, he'd paid attention to him.
I have a
But
joke about that somewhere in this review.
um, so anyway, the story I always heard, like, I remember reading this in Roddy Piper's book, which, Roddy Piper's book, great source of honesty and truth and everything, but that midget wrestlers have giant penises. And whether
That's the
they're
rumor.
actually, yeah, whether they're actually big or just like, you know, big proportionately to their body. I mean, when you're that large, if you have a 6-inch penis, I mean, that looks, a lot bigger on a small person than it does on a regular sized person.
Right. There's also it. Okay, so the difference between a midget and a dwarf, right? A dwarf is a little person that has normal proportions. They're just small. Midgets have like the crazy proportions, like the big thick legs and the big arms and the big heads and the big asses. Maybe that just falls over into the penis department too.
I'd say if you've got all that, I hope you're packing.
Yeah.
Um, Now, do you think that's why George Weingroff and Lone Eagle are partners because they both have large penises?
Well, I just thought that last week George Weingroff teamed with someone named after his penis, and this week he teamed with someone the size of his penis.
Oh, so they don't even have equally sized penises. His penis is as big as or Lone Eagle is as big as his penis.
I that's just the cost of doing business with George Weingroff.
I thought you were going to say the cost of doing business with you.
Yeah, I cost one large penis.
Oh God. So Lone Eagle
Somebody,
punches. Mhm.
so somebody's gonna take that out of context one day and it's gonna come back to haunt me.
Oh, we're getting canceled, in a year. Like when I become a world famous author, thanks to my wonderful book series, you know, they're gonna go back and listen to these shows and we're gonna get canceled.
Well, then we'll
Yeah,
be rich and we'll just be doing it for ourselves.
there you go. So Lone Eagle punches Stanton in the dick, and then Stanton accidentally kicks Lang in the gut. And then they redid the exact same spot where Stanton once again kicked Lang in the gut. The finish saw Lang go headfirst into Randy Anderson's penis, and then Eagle gave Lang a catapult for the cover. Stanton tries to pull him off, but Weingroff shoved him on top of the pile and sat down on top of everyone for the pin. That is an illegal pin and should not have counted.
Well, maybe it's legal because it's not a fucking backflip, it's a jump. I don't know. Fuck, the rules in this territory are fucking arbitrary.
So
But
other than the rant being a minute too early, what do you have to say about this match?
So I did note that Watts again mentioned the Hope, Arkansas watermelons. Always happy to hear a shout out there. My other note was just about the exactly as you described. The midgets ran a spot, and Lone Eagle just ran over to the corner and punched Tom Stanton right in the dick. That was fantastic. And then I made the note that if you think me calling them midgets is offensive, you should listen to Watts' commentary on this match.
Oh God, yes. Before you cancel us, go back and listen to Watts.
Yeah, cancel Bill Watts.
We get a midget match like once every 6 months or so, and it's like this is not the work rate match. This is not the serious wrestling match. We're not putting Butch Reed and Junkyard Dog in there with the little people. We're putting fucking Tom Stanton and George Weingroff in there.
Yeah,
it's fun.
And I mean, it's an attraction. It's just it's something fun. And these guys, like, they were respected by their peers. They were pro wrestlers. They were respected by everybody in the locker room, and they took pride in their work. They took pride in being midget wrestlers.
And it's a good kind of funny. That's all you can say. Like, this isn't like Mexico or whatever, where I mean they might treat it a little bit more serious than this, but it's like like if we were to watch this every week and Cowboy Lang was wrestling Lone Eagle every week, we'd get sick of it really fucking quickly. But it's like when Hornswoggle started, it was kind of funny and fun to watch this little person do what he did. But then when he was on TV every week and he was the cruiserweight champion and he was Vince McMahon's son, it's like it lost its luster. It's an attraction. Yeah. It's a gimmick. You can't keep going to the well.
Exactly. And we had the little conversation last show or the one before on one of these shows about comedy and wrestling. And it's like this is comedy, but like it's internally consistent. It's the little guys wrestling each other and doing their stuff. And it's like when they do stuff with the big guys, it makes sense in context. Like, I'm sorry, I was trying to Lone Eagle didn't do a fucking Poison Rana on Tom Stanton. He ran over and punched him in the dick. That's believable and it's funny. It's
like
they're not beating Chavo Guerrero on pay-per-view for the Cruiserweight title and killing the whole division.
We could be talking in 3 months and just randomly bring up Lone Eagle punching Tom Stanton in the dick, and that will just keep being funny.
Exactly. Oh, I also had another. If I could go back in time, I'm sorry. If I could go back in time and suggest a spot for this match, I would say, okay, after Lone Eagle punches Tom Stanton in the dick, have Cowboy Lang run over and punch George Weingroff in the dick and then sell his hand like he broke it.
Oh my God. I thought you were going to say after Lone Eagle punches Tom Stanton in the dick, you have Cowboy Lang run over and try to punch Lone Eagle, but Eagle moves, he punches Tom Stanton in the dick too.
Okay, that'd be good too. See, you could run this match around the fucking horn.
So by the way, I'd like to point out, I don't know if the one listener caught this or not, but Trey's like, we had a small conversation a few weeks ago. Oh, Lord.
Do you remember in the build to WrestleMania 2000 when they acted for like half a show that The Rock was going to have a handicap match against two midgets at WrestleMania before he earned his back way into the title match or whatever?
Yeah.
I'll always remember it. I'm sorry, Jerry Lawler is one of the greatest wrestlers of all time. He was like, if you have any kind of taste and you're not 13 anymore, he was a fucking horrible commentator and he was consistently just unfunny. But he had this exchange with Jim, and it wasn't even Lawler being funny. It was Jim Ross just like going off on him that made me laugh. So I can't remember what Lawler said to set it up. And JR just goes, yeah, no, Lawler said, well, it would have been a short match. And then Ross goes, yeah, he could have won it with the short arm scissors and taken him out after the match for shrimp. That exchange has been burned into my brain for 24 years.
So slightly more recently than that, there was, remember when speaking of Hornswoggle being Vince's son, during that storyline, they teased that, Melina was his daughter, and then they hinted but didn't say that those two had sex, you know, before that point. So it would have been Vince fucking his daughter if, that's how it would have turned out. But anyway, there was an episode of Raw where Melina was wrestling Mickie James and Lawler was not paying attention. And Melina's entering the match and JR is like, "What kind of a woman do you think she is?" And Lawler, who's not paying attention, not listening, is like, "Who?" And JR just pissed, loses it. "Who? I'm talking about Chad Patton, the referee. He had a sex change." That
Lawler's
is
best contributions were just making JR go off on him.
yes, yes. So Leaping Lanny Poffo versus the 8 foot tall Art Cruz. Cruz, unlike on World Class, does not have a height on this show, so I will assume that he's at least 8 feet tall, and you cannot teach that. So last week on this very podcasting program, I Lanny Poffo did a top rope moonsault. Trae lost his ever-loving mind, and I tried to defend it by saying that maybe no one told him that in this territory, off the top rope is a disqualification. Well, he did it again this week. And I'm still going to give him the ever so tiniest benefit of the doubt because this is the same TV taping. And so it's possible that Watts didn't murder him between tapings. So we'll see what he does next week.
I'll bet $10
But
he does the moonsault again next week.
I'm not going to take that bet, but if he does do the moonsault, I will press mute and allow you to rip this whole company a new asshole.
I didn't like the match was fine. I knew what was coming and I knew I'd be sour about it, so I just didn't get invested. And then it happened, and then just like at least it just happened and Watts didn't try to rationalize it this week. Like I would have been less offended if that was the rule and we knew that was the rule and then he just didn't acknowledge it. Like I was more offended by him trying to rationalize it. So at least he didn't try to rationalize it this week.
There you go. Nikolai Volkov versus Tony Torres. Geopolitical Bill Watts talked about how sometimes he's biased for America, and then he talked about how at a recent amateur wrestling tournament, the only American to win gold was David Schultz, who is not Dr. D and did not slap John Stossel to the best of our knowledge, but the other one who got murdered to death. And by the way, the other 7 gold medals in that tournament were won by Russian wrestlers. Volkov did not win a gold medal here, but he did win the match with a backbreaker.
So Nikolai, like he isn't exactly like he's not good, but like he's better here than he would be later. Like he still does some kind of interesting power spots.
I like the press slam into a backbreaker.
Okay, it looked like shit. It looked like shit the first few times, and then like the last couple of weeks, he's kind of got it down better.
I also like that, and I haven't noticed if he's done this every week. Maybe this is the first time he's done this, but Tony Torres was laying on the ground and Nikolai hoisted him up. So there is no, Tony Torres did not jump up for Nikolai Volkov to give him a backbreaker. This was pure fucking strength.
Yeah, Nikolai's fucking strong.
Yes. And so yeah, Volkov wins, and I'll be honest, I don't remember where they're going with him, or if they're going anywhere with him, because soon we're getting the talent trade with Memphis, and I forget who goes. I think Missing Link is one of them, thank God, but I forget who else is out the door.
I got some bad news for you, honey. Max is going to Dallas next.
Oh, goddamn motherfucking son of a bitch.
We can't get away from these people. Oh, God. I'm trying to remember, I want to say, the two names that stick in my mind as going from Mid South to Memphis are like Rick Rude and the One Man Gang, who have been on like in the past month or so, but haven't been on like definitely weren't on these tapings.
Yeah. Oh well. We'll see how the crowd we'll see the turnover soon because it's literally next month. Like,
Yay.
So let's go to Bill Watts with a quick recap of last week's tag team title change.
Boy, you know, when the going gets tough, the tough get going. And you can't take it away from Hacksaw Butch Reed. He had just lost the North American title. His plans had backfired on him. But he's not a quitter. He's a double tough guy. And this Jim the Anvil Neidhart is some kind of tough also. And they, last week, went right out here on Mid-South Wrestling and defeated Magnum TA and Hacksaw Dugan, are now the Mid-South Tag Team Champions. They could be one of the most awesome teams, awesome machines that's ever been. Let's join the final moments and see how that action took place.
All right. So, nothing really there. It's just, Watts talking about the title change and putting over Reed and Neidhart. He's not putting them over like, oh, it was a fluke. They had to cheat to win. They had to do this, that, the other thing. No, he put them over as, hey, this double tough fucking team, they won, and now they're the champions. And Reed overcame adversity after losing his belt earlier in the show.
Yeah.
So then we got Butch Reed and Jim Neidhart versus George Weingroff's penis name, King Cobra, and Mike Reed, who, as mentioned, is not the dad from the Brady Bunch, no matter how many times I'd like him to be it. Neidhart's belt is missing a side plate, and maybe it's been like that and I just haven't noticed. But, I thought about how when Scott Steiner broke the WCW Tag Team title belt and they didn't fix it forever. That's what I thought of here.
I have a weird observation to make about that that's unrelated to anything else. So, I don't remember the exact timeline, but they did the NWA tag title tournament in '92, and then the Miracle Violence Connection won, and they were already the WCW tag team champions, so they had both. Mm-hmm. And then I don't know what happens. By the time I picked up watching in '93, it was one set of belts was gone, and then it was one WCW belt and one NWA belt that like the Hollywood Blondes had. And then what was the last show I watched? Beach Blast. Mm-hmm. Like randomly, they had both NWA tag belts and no WCW tag belts. What the fuck happened?
So I can't speak to that, but what I can say is that the Miracle Violence Connection were both champs. They lost it to Dustin Rhodes and Barry Windham. They lost it on a Clash of the Champions to Ricky Steamboat and Shane Douglas, which is when Windham turned heel on Steamboat and Douglas. And then that led to the Starrcade match, an underrated Starrcade match with Steamboat and Douglas versus Windham and Pillman. And then since Windham was going for the NWA World title, he hot tagged out to Stunning Steve, and the Hollywood Blondes won the belts from Steamboat and Douglas. And that brings you to where you are. I cannot speak to the belts themselves. Maybe they lost one set of the belts. I don't know.
The whole NWA thing is going to fall apart in about 6 more weeks anyway, so
yeah,
see what happens.
Yeah, we've been covering that also on the Smoky Mountain show. It's coming to an end, and it's not surprising because WCW is even WCW with where they are at this point in 1993, and they're at the lowest they're pretty much ever going to be when it comes to popularity. They have severely outgrown the NWA. They don't need the NWA title or the NWA tag team titles. They got their own shit. And, I'm sorry, but it's true kind of thing. The NWA system, honestly, even if they had real territories and it's not just a hodgepodge of independent promotions, it's like that outgrew its usefulness in the 80s. And I know it's kind of, shocking for someone to say that, but it's true. It was always going to fall apart. with promoters wanting the world title to go on them or one of their guys, and it just sped up the whole process. When Crockett got national TV and got basically control of the belt.
And if it hadn't been Crockett, it would have been somebody else.
Exactly. And like when everyone talks about, oh, Vince ruined wrestling by going national, it's like, motherfucker, somebody was going to.
Cable TV.
Vince, yeah.
Somebody was going to make use of cable TV.
Vince had the means. And
yeah,
okay, sure, he went around and was a dick and took everyone's talent and helped put them out of business, but those talents did not have to leave. Those talents didn't have to leave. Those promoters could have done whatever they could to keep them, even though like they weren't going to. Plus, the system they had really wasn't feasible to try to beat Vince's best offer, and it is what it is at this point.
Look at the other side of that, where Crockett tried to do quote unquote the right thing and like bought Florida and bought Mid-South and bought fucking Central States. That is a lot of what killed Crockett Promotions.
Yeah. It gave him I'm not saying he got way too many TV stations, but I'm saying it put the bill, easy for me to say. It made his commitment, the amount of money that he had committed to go out way too much. Like, he didn't have to fucking buy Central States. Like, there was no benefit in buying that company other than just being a nice person. He didn't have to buy Florida. Like, I can understand why he didn't call Jim Ross's bluff when JR said that Vince was putting in a competing offer for, the UWF. But in all honesty, it's like he didn't fucking need, Mid-South / UWF. Like, at the end of the day, Dusty ruined all that talent except for Sting, and he lucked into Sting. And so all he got out of that 1 point something million was Sting and a whole bunch of TV stations that I guarantee he probably should have just gotten him fucking self, and he may have been able to cut a better deal on it.
By the way, the one territory that Vince actually did buy, Calgary, and then he paid for he was supposed to pay so much every year for however many years, and he paid 1 year, and then the next year he was like, why the fuck am I paying this? And just didn't anymore.
Yeah. And so kudos to Jim Ross for helping put JCP out of business. I think we're going to go out of business anyway, but at the end of the day, that would have been $1.5 million that Crockett could have had extra. And, in addition to all the money that he had to spend on the television network, that's a lot of fucking money that, Crockett was out because JR convinced him otherwise.
Speaking of people who saved wrestling companies for a time, I do want to acknowledge that, as we tape this, Joe Koff passed away today. Joe Koff was I forget his exact job title, but he was essentially the person in charge of the business end of ROH under Sinclair, and he was instrumental in putting that deal together that saved ROH in 2012. He was also kept it alive during the pandemic and kept it from granted, what Ring of Honor isn't like the greatest thing, but I think it's better than what it would have been otherwise, which it would have been another button on Peacock. But so I can't say I knew him, but I ran into him at ROH shows a couple of times, and it's just I didn't seek out conversations with him. We would just see each other, and he would always speak to me, and just such a nice guy, such a friendly guy. You can tell he loved being around wrestling, loved being around fans, and so I just want to say R.I.P. Joe Koff.
All right. So by the way, in case you have any doubt, Butch Reed and Jim Neidhart did defeat King Cobra and Mike Reed. Watt said he'd like to see Neidhart versus Duggan, and I'm like, well, maybe he should speak to matchmaker Grizzly Smith.
So I spent most of this match trying to figure out where Chula, Mississippi was. and it is in the middle of fucking nowhere. Like I don't even think I've ever been through there, and I've been like up and down and across Mississippi every which way. But just Chula, Mississippi is so in the middle of fucking nowhere, so far from any like main highways that yeah, I don't think I've ever even been through Chula.
Mhm. Um, so not that this is a super important thing that we need to discuss right now, but as of when we're recording this, Dave Meltzer is reporting that AEW Rampage will be ending soon, possibly as early as this coming Friday, the 25th, or it could be the end of this calendar year.
Man, I'm gonna miss there being wrestling on Friday nights.
Yeah. Well, the third show being shopped around is not going to be on Sundays, Mondays, or Thursdays. So, you know, you're down to Tuesday and Friday pretty much.
Either one works for me.
Yeah. Alrighty. So, yeah, like we said, Neidhart and Butch Reed win. Magnum TA versus King Kong Bundy for the North American Heavyweight Championship. Watts talks about how Junkyard Dog is not the referee, so now TA has to show what he really is, and also says that Bundy can only win the belt with a 5 count, to which I say bullshit. Thankfully it did not come into play here though. Bundy misses the big splash, TA makes a comeback, Bundy whips Magnum into the referee, which ends up really meaning nothing. I mean, ish, I guess, because Bundy hits the Atlantic City Avalanche for a phantom count. He goes and argues with the referee, so Magnum TA drop kicks him in the head for the pin.
I don't know why I make the effort to write out describe these finishes because you always just explain it and then I don't need to. But yeah. I just want to shout out the old man in the front row who like loudly yawned during this match.
I did not see the old man in the front row.
What time of day
Was,
do they do
was
these tapings? Was it late in the evening? He looked like a fucking farmer. He probably got up at 4 o'clock in the morning and it was like in the afternoon and he was watching fucking King Kong Bundy.
I I don't know. I don't know when they tape these things. Like, they might tape them in like the early afternoon so they can go to the house show, but I also don't know what day of the week they tape them. So who knows?
Didn't they do TV on Saturdays?
I thought they may have done it like in the middle of the week, but who knows?
Maybe I'm thinking of World Class being Saturday. Hold on, I'm gonna Google this real quick. Oh, wait, I Googled the wrong fucking date. Hold on. I Googled the air date of the show, which is Saturday.
Yes.
Okay, yeah, Wednesday. They taped on every other Wednesday.
Junkyard Dog versus Max. They announced this match is one fall of remaining television time. There were 12 minutes left on the show, plus the commercial break. So I, for one, am really happy that Junkyard Dog versus Max did not go 15 minutes.
Yeah.
At one point, Watts says Dog is a great athlete, so he won't let himself get out of condition. I wonder what Watts says 8 years later.
So this was the point where I noted that Max got the jump on Dog, and Dog did not get introduced anyway because Reeser Bowden is not a drunk. At least he's not drunk on TV.
Poor drunk Mark Lawrence. He's trying to get on the wagon.
I hope so.
But
so Max,
Mhm.
I'm sorry. Max likes to headbutt people in the kidneys, and Dog fucking loves to headbutt people. So he just says, "All right, bet," and then proceeds to batter Max with body shots. Like this was like a fairly competitive match, and like I thought it was mildly interesting at least on the Max scale. Like probably the best match we've seen Max have.
I would say, does that make it the worst match we saw at Junkyard Dog have? But I'm sure we've seen worse Junkyard Dog matches.
No, I don't think so.
So Dog wins with a thump. you know.
Yes.
And then Crusher Darsow versus Mike Bond. Mike Bond clapped when his opponent was introduced. There's good sportsmanship, and then there's just stupidity.
Yeah.
They announced that Grizzly Smith is trying to negotiate a contract for Dusty Rhodes to be here next week, which reminded me, wasn't Dusty Rhodes supposed to be here last week?
I don't remember them saying anything about it for this week, but knowing their habits, I believe you.
No, but don't you remember like 2 or 3 weeks ago, Watts said that next week Dusty would be here because I talked about how uh, Dusty signed an exclusive contract with Mid-South at the beginning in 1982 and then never appeared on the show again.
Yeah, I think that was several weeks back because I remember that they said Dusty was going to be there, and then they just ended up showing a tape from Houston with like Dusty
Oh,
and Bundy.
yeah, that's right. Never mind. I was wrong. I'm sorry. So
So,
Watts brings up that next week's show is going to be during the Shreveport State Fair and brings up what is honestly one of the best angles in Mid-South history when last year when Junkyard Dog was said to be in jail and thus couldn't appear at the show, and he got replaced by Matt Bourne in a match with Ted DiBiase facing Junkyard Dog and Mr. Olympia, and they had the gorilla mascot from the Shreveport State Fair in the arena playing with the children, all that shit. And then the gorilla runs over and costs Junkyard Dog the match, and the gorilla ended up being Jim Duggan. It's a fantastic angle, and it leads to Dog being out of Mid-South for 90 days. Spoiler alert, nothing that great will happen in the next 2 weeks.
I'm pretty sure I've seen that. I think it was on the Legends of Mid-South Blu-ray.
Yes, it was. You know, I the
Yes.
I'll tell you what, I had mixed feelings watching that originally just because there's a Ric Flair Terry Taylor match there from the Superdome, and they had Jim Ross doing commentary like it's 1985 and not like it's 2010 or whatever, and he's doing commentary from the studio. I I didn't like that because it was so obviously not 1985.
Yeah, I don't know. I liked it. I thought it was like easily, probably by a wide margin, the best match Terry Taylor ever had.
I would say it's not really saying much, but like Terry Taylor had good matches, but like he's never, had that like astoundingly great match.
This was a pretty great match. Like this was like a Saturday for Ric Flair, but this was the match of Terry Taylor's life.
Yeah. And I remember the story of that when Terry Taylor was saying, at least on the DVD, was that,
Yes,
he showed up and he's in great condition because this is the biggest match of his career. And Flair shows up drunk and hungover from a long night of partying. And Terry Taylor's pissed beyond fucking belief. He can't believe this asshole wouldn't treat this match as seriously as he did. And Taylor goes out to the ring for the match, and Flair comes out looking like, he had, 10 hours of sleep and never looked at alcohol, much less drank any.
amazing, fucking amazing.
Yes. There for good and bad, there will never be another Ric Flair.
Absolutely, for good and bad.
Yeah. We find out also that Dr. Death is finishing his last semester in college because he is a winner. Uh, Darsow beat on Mike Bond for about 25 minutes and then submitted him with an over-the-shoulder backbreaker.
It went 3.5 minutes.
It just felt a lot longer because Mike Bond, I don't think, got in any offense. And
No,
Darsow,
no.
Darsow wasn't even going for recovers. He was just hitting big moves and then picking them up, hitting big moves and picking them up. And
Honestly, my only note about this match was that they said that Dusty would be here next week, and I assume that means that they'll play another match from an arena somewhere.
I do think he's actually going to be here soon. Maybe I'm wrong, but I guess we'll have to wait and see.
We shall see.
All right. So I previewed this earlier in the show. We've had some all-time great babyface promos, but I'm going to play you one of the greatest. This is from February 9th, 1991, WCW Pro. Let's go to Lance Russell, who's going to be interrupted by a new challenger to Ric Flair.
Challenge Rick. Whoa, look at that. Here he comes right down here.
Uh-oh.
Uh-oh. Hey.
Ooh.
El Gigante, let us say, we want to get a con. You want to get in the ring here with Ric Flair.
No. I want to build your bill.
I wonder how long it took him to learn that.
There you go. I want the belt.
That was so, like, how does, like, he's from Argentina, and I've heard people from Argentina speak English. And none of their accents sounded like a fucking redneck like that.
Well, who's teaching him English?
I don't know. I learned Spanish from a guy from Argentina, but I don't know how that works the other way.
Do you speak Spanish with an Argentinian accent?
No, I did. Like, I learned a couple of little, like, tics that I kind of just fell out of, and I don't speak Spanish super well. I probably would if I really worked at it. I can halfway kind of read and write it if I take my time. I can usually cobble together enough to be understood. I'm dog shit at hearing Spanish, and I don't know. I guess it's just because I'm from Arkansas and my hearing doesn't work that fast. But my first Spanish teacher in undergrad was a Fulbright scholar from Argentina. Shout out to Gonzalo. I'm sure you're listening to the podcast. Why wouldn't you be?
I can't imagine a world where he's not listening to this podcast.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, let's get to World Class Championship Wrestling. It's 190 miles west. And go to the intro here with Bill Mercer, who's going to talk about the huge main event we have this week.
World Class Championship Wrestling from the Sportatorium, the most famous wrestling arena in the world. I'm Bill Mercer. Great to have you with us. And World Class Championship Wrestling has a World Heavyweight Championship bout. It is, of course, the Iceman King Parsons as the challenger. And I say, of course, because he has earned his right to challenge for that heavyweight championship, owned by the inimitable Harley Race, the big tough one. So it's the Iceman and King Parsons battles Harley Race for the World Heavyweight Championship, our main event of World Class Championship Wrestling. We're going to have, coming up, an exciting match between Michael Hayes and Johnny Mantell next on World Class Championship Wrestling.
Why must Bill Mercer lie to us?
His integrity went away with the mustache.
And, why can't Buddy Roberts grow his hair back? Because, I believe, he just shaved his mustache, as we mentioned, out of solidarity for Buddy Roberts. Because maybe he thought Buddy and the Freebirds would let him swim in the pool now.
Well, maybe he used the Freebirds hair cream on his mustache, and that's why it hasn't grown back.
Oh, God damn it. Why didn't I think about that?
Exactly.
So the inevitable Harley Race is going to take on the Iceman King Parsons for the NWA World Heavyweight Championship on this week's program. And then we kick things off with an exciting match between Michael Hayes and John Mantell. And I got to say, Inevitable must have been on Bill Mercer's Word of the Day toilet paper because he called drunk Mark Lawrence Inevitable as well. Then he then talks about the Super D's coming in. It says a D is in dandy, and made me think I want to believe that it's the Super Dandies coming in, but then I'm like, wouldn't that describe Jimmy Garvin, Super Dandy?
I hope it's Silver King and El Dandy.
Oh, Los Fabulosos.
Yeah.
I'm fairly certain that Silver King and El Dandy were not wrestling in 1983.
Who are you to doubt El Dandy?
I mean, he is a serious professional. He's a jam-up guy and everything.
Absolutely. Him and that hypnosis.
By the way, Mantell goes for a hug it out, but Hayes, instead of hugging him back, deposited him neck first on the top rope with a stun gun for the pin. That makes Hayes the top babyface, in my opinion.
So I got distracted during this match, and then I got to the finish, and I realized that I had watched none of it. And because I am a journalist, I went back and watched it, and it was okay.
I can't believe you watched a John Mantell match twice.
I mean, it was 3 minutes, so that's only like a third of a regular John Mantell match.
So up next, we got what was deemed a most interesting recap between David Von Erich and Kamala. In case you didn't listen to us last week, first of all, what the fuck is wrong with you? But secondly, David gave Kamala the Iron Claw, and now Kamala is afraid of David Von Erich and the Claw. So after I fast-forwarded those few minutes, we got an Iceman Parsons music video where he beat up the Great Kabuki for what felt like 20 minutes. So I fast-forwarded through that and came back just in time to announce that next week, Kevin Von Erich will wrestle Terry Gordy, which made my face drop until I realized they haven't wrestled each other in a singles match in a bit anyway. Because it's been Kerry and Terry that we've been having all the damn time.
I just wish I knew what the original song was in this music video.
I'm sure it was something great. Yeah, maybe it was our theme song from the opening of the show.
Oh, that'd be tremendous.
Indeed, it would be. So then we got America's champion, Jimmy Garvin, with Sunshine and Sunshine's valet, whose name is Sunshine's valet at the moment, versus Art Cruz. Now, I don't want to claim that this was taped on the same day as last week's show, but everybody involved was dressed exactly the same. And to be honest, I only noticed because I remembered Jimmy Garvin was wearing white from head to toe. And here he was this week wearing exactly the same clothes. Now, Trey, last week, Art Cruz was introduced on this program as 6'7" and 250 pounds. And I made you write that down to note while watching this week's episode of World Class, because how big is Art Cruz this week?
I didn't even catch it. What was it?
He's 6 foot tall. He shrunk 7 inches since last week.
Was his name spelled right on the Chiron last week?
Yes, actually. They changed the spelling of his name too.
So it's always Art Cruz, Crews, and the Chiron this week said Art Kruz. So he's German now, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, hey, Fritz made a career out of it.
There you go. We're not going to start vicious rumors that Art Cruz is a Nazi, though.
Not at all. Heil Cruz. Heil Cruz.
Did you know that Eddie Gilbert was almost kind of like Hitler, but not quite that bad?
I did know that, actually.
Oh my Godcast.com, everybody.
Cruz, by the way, Chris Adams got in the ring and called Garvin a coward. So Garvin laughed at him, and then Sunshine pushed Adams. And because Adams isn't really a babyface, he did not beat up Sunshine. Instead, he walked away. Because remember, this is Texas, and this is Texas in 1983. You hit women to show that you're a babyface. Cruz, hey, maybe Cruz is actually going to get a push here because he got more of a comeback than he's ever gotten in Mid-South. Like we've been watching Mid-South now for almost 2 years. I think this match is the most amount of offense Cruz has ever gotten. But
yeah, I observed. I said Garvin like actually gave Art Cruz a lot here. You absolutely would not expect Cruz to get this much offense on say like someone in a comparable spot in Mid-South. Art Cruz would not be winning on them that much. Maybe Garvin just liked him.
quite possibly. We'll see how this progresses. I mean, it can't be any worse than the John Mantell push.
No, it can't.
So Garvin wins with the DDT, and then he steps outside the ring where Bill Mercer has booked it to ringside to interview him about Chris Adams.
Twice now, Jimmy Garvin. Chris Adams has called you a coward the last 2 weeks. When are you going to battle Chris Adams?
Chris who?
Chris Adams.
Chris who? I don't even know what you're talking about. There's some phony Englishman running around here. And I'm trying to tell everybody, man, he's not no Englishman.
Yeah, well,
he's from Biloxi, Mississippi, and nobody deserves to get in the ring with Jimmy Garvin, especially somebody like that.
When are you going to defend your American championship
Chris
again?
who?
Chris Adams.
Chris Adams, man, I don't have the time of day for you, you phony Englishman. I know where you're from, and you're looking at the American heavyweight champion. And I don't even know your name, Chris Adams. Ha, 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 ha. Anytime, man, you want to see the greatest thing in the world, just open your eyes.
All right, gorgeous Jimmy Garvin will not answer the challenge.
Chris who?
Yes, Chris who. We'll be back with more. The heavyweight championship match in just a moment.
I don't know Chris.
Okay, I gotta say, between this and Chris Candido and Smoky Mountain's comments about how, he doesn't cheat because he's from New Jersey, we're getting some great lines by cowardly heels here. And Jimmy Garvin saying he doesn't know what Chris Adams' name is. That's just tremendous.
I want to backtrack just a bit to the end of the match. Jimmy Garvin hit the move that we all recognize as a DDT, but probably hadn't been named that in 1983. And Bill Mercer referred to it as a head stopper, which accurate.
I mean, yeah, that was definitely an accurate definition or an accurate description of that move. And it's possible that's how Art Cruz became only 6 feet tall. He used to be 6'7". And,
Maybe.
Yeah. Well, then we get the World's Heavyweight Championship match. Harley Race, 7-time World's Heavyweight Champion, defending against Iceman Parsons. Now, the last time we had an NWA World Title match on television, it was back in June. It was at the Reunion Arena show, and it was against Kevin Von Erich. And David Von Erich came out and cost his brother the World Heavyweight Championship because David Von Erich has a temper and he can't let anybody else become successful and win the world title, apparently.
Mm-hmm.
So David Von Erich is in Parsons' corner, and I'm like, I would not let, and this is before I watched the match, I'm like, I would not let David be in my corner if I was Iceman Parsons. Harley is screaming at David Manning, who we've noted is biased, because apparently they had, during a Harley Race match a few nights ago, David Manning hit him, and so it's perfectly feasible. Why would David Manning still be refereeing his matches, if he's going to be hitting him during the match? The match started with 20 minutes of TV time, and I didn't time it, and I'm sure you did, but they went quite a while on this show, and they did it without a commercial break too.
Yeah, they went 16 minutes and 8 seconds.
Yep. So I mentioned to you while I was watching this last week how racist wrestling is. So Harley uses his falling headbutt. If you've ever seen a Harley Race match, you've seen this. He just falls with a headbutt onto his fallen opponent's head. Iceman Parsons is African American. And I don't even know when the hell this actually stopped, because I can still remember Coco Beware doing this in the early 90s. In pro wrestling parlance, at least the American version of it, African American people's heads were as hard as Samoan people's heads. And so when Harley Race gave Parsons a headbutt, it hurt Harley Race, and did not hurt Parsons at all.
Yes, that is what happened.
And then I'm not even done yet here. Harley drops a knee on Iceman's head and gives him a pile driver, both of which Iceman sells. Moves where he's landing on his head. But then Harley takes him outside the ring and sends him headfirst into the post, and Parsons does not sell that. What the fuck is going on?
Also, Harley gave him, I think they meant to do like just a plain suplex, but it ended up being basically a brain buster on the concrete floor. And like Parsons, like he did sell it, but he was not as bad off as Race was when Parsons had butted him on the outside of the ring earlier in the match.
Parsons gives Harley a headbutt on the floor, and David Manning counted to 10 with such speed. I could not believe this match was ending in a count out. But it wasn't, because they actually have a 20 count out. But I think this is the first time since we've been watching this that they've even teased a count out in any match.
Yes, I had no idea that it was a 20 count in World Class.
Yeah. Harley did beat the 20 count into the ring. Bronco Lubick was at ringside, and we've talked shit about Bronco Lubick, rightfully so, over the years. But Bronco Lubick was at ringside and ordered David Von Erich to sit down in a chair if he's going to be in the corner. Because that's been the thing that we've seen a lot of times. Like King Kong Bundy was in someone's corner a few months ago, and he sat in a chair next to Mark Lawrence. And because I remember laughing at how preposterous it looked from Bundy in his gear to be sitting next to Mark Lawrence. But David Von Erich, being the hothead that he is, he would not sit down in a fucking chair, and the match continues. David, by the way, interfered and tossed Harley down, but that was not a disqualification. Iceman locks on an abdominal stretch, but he did not grab the ropes. So obviously Mike Rotunda did not teach him that move either. The finish, oh my God, the finish. The finish sees Harley slap David. So David hits Harley. Parsons throws down David Manning and hits she calls that the rear view on Harley for the pin. However, and you can say what you want, and maybe it's just that Iceman was not as over as one of the Von Erichs who had been in a similar situation. I think that the fans knew that this was a screw job because they popped, but they didn't really pop for a world title change here. And I think they also just figured that the world title is not going to change hands in the fucking Sportatorium. And sure enough, Bronco saw David Von Erich punch Harley Race, and he disqualified King Parsons because it's illegal and unlawful for David to deck Harley. And I'm like, maybe if he had listened to Bronco and sat the fuck down, Harley wouldn't have slapped him. And now this is the second time David Von Erich has fucked somebody out of the world title this year.
I tell you, with friends like David Von Erich, who needs enemies?
Yeah. Suddenly it explains how Kerry won the world title. It wasn't just it wasn't like we said it's because David Von Erich died, but
it was just not in the way. Oh my God, I had not thought of that. Oh
yeah, David wasn't around anymore to fuck Kerry out of the belt.
Jesus. So I want to just have a little bit of commentary on this match. This match was interesting to me as far as being a sterling example of the world champion facing a local babyface who wasn't a great wrestler and figuring out how to make it work, which is a position that I'm sure Harley Race was intimately familiar with.
Yep.
And I've said before, like, Parsons doesn't exactly suck. Like, he's good on offense. He looks really good making a comeback. It's when he has to sell that shit goes bad. So Race worked a match with him where Race sold like a motherfucker the whole match, and Parsons did not have to sell more than like the bare minimum necessary. And I thought that it was very effective. I don't think anybody in the world could have gotten a better match out of King Parsons. And I thought the finish was like pretty creative for what they needed to accomplish.
I'll be honest, and I should have known better, but I honestly thought Harley was just going to win. Like, at least until we saw David at ringside, I'm like, okay, this is a match because everyone always complains that the world champion never actually wins. So we're just going to have, we're going to give Harley a match where he can actually win the match. And that is not what had happened.
No. It's just, I would be shocked if it ever comes to light that King Parsons ever had a better match than this.
I don't think it's possible. I mean, does he ever wrestle Flair? Maybe.
He might have. It's just I don't know. It probably worked. Harley, I just felt like really knew what the fuck he was doing here.
I mean, it's funny because it's like, Harley Race, Jack Briscoe, they're not your flashy world champions. Dory Funk Jr. Like, these people aren't your flashy world champions. They always, like, nowadays, now that I've seen 40 years of larger than life world champions, like it almost frightens me to think to go back and watch, Jack Briscoe defending the world title. Because, like, that just, like, no offense to Jack Briscoe, but that just sounds dull as fuck. But it's like, watch this fucking Harley Race match with King Parsons. This is what a world champion does. It doesn't have to be dull AF.
Yeah, no, this was very good. That turns out that Harley Race fella pretty good at pro wrestling.
Write that down. By the way, Iceman Parsons, from what I could tell, has never wrestled Ric Flair.
Oh, what a tragedy.
It's a bit of a tragedy, up there with, leaving your underwear in your friend's couch cushion.
Is that a thing that's happened in your life?
No, I was just thinking about the room.
Okay.
So
here's
a match for you from February 5th, 83, Mid-Atlantic. His last match in Mid-Atlantic. Iceman Parsons and Greg Valentine defeated Ken Timms and Masa Fuchi.
Oh wow. That sounds like something. I know that your view on it is very negative, but I'm gonna have to go back when we get done with this and go back and watch Mid-Atlantic from this period.
Oh Lord, join us for that Mid-Atlantic show I do on angrymarks.com. You'll give up because not every week do you have Lord Al Hayes talking about swilling beer and Roncevet.
Yeah. So we need to talk about David.
Okay.
Not to spoil it for anybody who's following along in real time, but David's only got about 3 or 4 months to live here.
No.
Sorry if that's a spoiler that a man who passed away 40 years ago is going to pass away soon. And
someone who died before any of us were born.
Yeah, David, like, to hear people tell it, in retrospect, David was like he was the best of the Von Erichs, and he would have been the world champion, and he would have been a successful world champion. And he was the best. He was the Yellow Rose of Texas. He was the best of all the boys. And watching all this, he's not as good a wrestler as Kevin. He's not as good looking or charismatic as Kerry. And his entire character is he's a dickhead. Like what? I don't want to speak ill of anybody or suggest that maybe people's memories get skewed in their favor if they pass away tragically, but I don't think that David's reputation was anything that he earned.
Honestly, it's like, and I said this to you earlier, it's like he didn't have the chance to be a fuck up. Harry was a colossal fuck up. People don't remember this, but Kevin was a fuck up. You know, David died before he could be a fuck up. And, you know, the hilarious part is like he died fucking up. You know, you don't need Bill Irwin to flush your drugs down the toilet if you're not doing something that's a little iffy.
I thought it was Brody that flushed the drugs down the toilet.
Oh, I thought it was Bill Irwin. Either way, you don't need somebody to flush your drugs down the toilet after you die if you're not doing something a little fishy.
And I don't know, I've heard kind of different takes on that story. And there were people, you know, David had a fucking heart condition that nobody knew about. And I remember like Fumi Saito kind of being appalled at the idea that Giant Baba might have you know, greased some palms to keep certain news from getting out. And it's like, and I'm sure as far as wrestling promoters go, Giant Baba has more integrity than like most of them. But I also like Baba and Fritz were very good friends. And I'm just I guess what I'm saying is I absolutely believe that Giant Baba might have made it so some unpleasant information didn't get released to the public.
That's perfectly believable.
Yeah. Anyway, that was all I had to say about that.
That's all I have to say about that.
Yeah.
So did you see what Russo said about Jey Uso and Rikishi's response?
No.
Well, Jey Uso won the Intercontinental title a few weeks ago, the linear AEW World Champion, and he was emotional when he won. It was a big deal. It was the first singles title that he's officially won because, of course, no one acknowledges the linear AEW World title. But Russo mocked him for it. I don't know if it was on his podcast or on Twitter or whatever, but Russo mocked Jey Uso for that, and Rikishi basically told him to fuck the fuck off.
So Rikishi's been saying a lot of dumb shit lately, but fuck Vince Russo. There was a famous Winston Churchill quote that he said, if Hitler invaded hell, he would at least make a favorable reference to the devil in the House of Commons. And that's how I feel about Vince Russo.
They're going to say that Winston Churchill made a famous comment, fuck Vince Russo.
I'm gonna spread that and make it a thing.
I don't see why not, all right?
Yeah.
Let me see if I could find that quote here. Okay, here we go. So Russo mocks Jey Uso for getting emotional about his win on Raw, and Rikishi responds, if you're listening, Russo, first of all, you can go screw yourself. You don't have the right to even put my son's name in your mouth. You don't have a right to talk about somebody that has laced up the boots for 17 plus years, had broken bones, sweat, tears, all of it in that ring. Anybody can pull up a pencil and write your fantasies of what you think an angle is supposed to be. But when you talk about my boy, when you talk about what you don't understand, you're right. You didn't understand. If you got a problem with me, if you have a problem with my son, if you got a problem with him winning the strap, the so-called prop, step up. Let's do this. We ain't even gonna have my boy there. me and you, anytime you want to open your mouth about the Anoa'i Fatu clan and you try to disrespect what my boys or my family has worked hard for, man, what is it with you? Like trying to knock a moment that means so much to a person that's well deserving. So I ain't hard to find, my man. You want to link up? You know where to find me. Keep my family's name out of your mouth, especially my son.
Yeah, good for Rikishi. Fuck Vince Russo.
Yep.
That's something else I was going to say and I lost it. Oh yeah, so I feel like we're pretty fair to Jim Cornette on these shows. You know, an all-time great manager, all-time great promo. Here and there booker, here and there promoter. Little bit unhinged in his old age, and has very I think very unfair opinions about modern wrestling that are steeped into some shit that needs a therapist to work through anyway. But I am absolutely rooting for Jim Cornette to outlive Vince Russo so he can piss on his grave.
I would love to see that, and I hope he gets his wife to live stream it in more ways than one, I guess.
Stream.
Yes. I can't even. Oh, Stacy is his wife. I'm like, what the hell's his wife's name?
Yes, Stacy.
All right. So that's gonna do it for this week. Surprisingly, we've now done 2 shows in a row where, the show hasn't gone 3 hours long. I guess we haven't done a 3-hour show in a while, but
Yeah. I think we've maybe we've got the rhythm down.
I think we're running out of like off topics to go off on a rant about. We may have to write down some new ones before next week. But that takes away the greatness of the show when we lose the spontaneity of us going off on a random tangent. Oh,
I mean,
well.
we still do. We still do. It's just maybe we don't quite linger as long on it.
Very true. Well, that's going to do it for this week's show. Trey, do you want to plug the Oh My God cast?
Yeah, check out the Oh My God cast, ohmygodcast.com, or wherever fine podcasts are sold. And you can find out in what way Eddie Gilbert is almost kind of like Hitler, but not quite that bad. And let's see. So by the time this episode drops, there will also be a new episode. And I haven't watched the shows yet, so I don't have a joke about that yet.
Oh, Lord. I can only imagine somebody reading the description of these episodes and they're going to read Eddie Gilbert almost being like Hitler. And it's clickbait, everybody. To our one listener who's hearing this, it's fucking clickbait. We're trying to get people to click on it to hear about us talk about Eddie Gilbert being like Hitler.
I promise it makes sense in context.
Yes. That's important.
But if you want the context, you got to listen to the Oh My God cast.
All right. Well, that's going to do it for this week's fine audio program. I want to thank everyone for listening. I hope you all enjoyed it, and we'll talk to you again in 7 days.
Bye.